98.3 FM.
Welcome on board the Morning Express.
Good morning.
It's been 52 days since our children and teachers were taken from their school, a place of learning, a place that can easily be called a sanctuary. Also in Borno State, kids were taken from school. They've been counting down in fear, worried about their state of health. We are worried about their state of mind, and we have not forgotten about them. We can only urge the government to expedite whatever action they are currently taking as we record small successes in the fight against insecurity and the rising spate of adoptions in Nigeria. Abductions, I beg your pardon. I decided to open the program this way, so it's not like they have become a distant memory. As many would say, something else will happen and Nigerians will move on. Well, we refuse to buy into that stereotype. As much as many other things are happening within the political landscape, within our economy, the banter that's happening between the elites, the banter happening between the political class and what have you, I think that we should prioritize the safety and the welfare of those who have been taken from their place or the place that they know as home, and again continue to urge the government to do better. Good morning and welcome to a new week. This is Mainland 98.3 FM, the sound of Lagos. The program is Trends in the Papers. My name is Sage Babalola. We're ready to take you through the news. It's expected for outside would be joining us via the phone. But before we get into the stories, do well to check our social media platforms. Follow us on Facebook and on YouTube. Be sure to join the live stream so you're able to watch this episode as well as contribute at the same time. Check the website as well. It's www.mainlandfm.com. You can listen on there, although there's no channel of contribution on the website. However, you can listen to the programs in real time as well as familiarize yourself with the programming, the timing, and also the presenters that handle these programs. You might find the program that would cater to whatever need you have when it comes to listening to radio. But we're streaming on Facebook and on YouTube right now. We do so on our program, so you can join the live stream at Mainland 98.3 FM. Our frequency is how you find us on all these social media platforms. Again, welcome to Trends in the Papers. I'm Sage Babalola. Let's take your mind back to some of the weekend reports as we practice here every Monday, just to refresh our memories and help us find the nexus between these stories and the ones that have been most recently reported on the front covers of our pages as we begin to analyze them at this moment. So some of the weekend reports are as follows. The Punch newspaper had reported kidnapped Ekiti worshippers regain freedom. One dies in captivity. Tinubu Media Center post AI image of Remi Tinubu selling akara. Vatican diplomat meets Tinubu in Abuja. Tinubu flags off 137 billion naira road rehabilitation projects in Borno. World Bank confirms Anambra did not apply for 2024 Hope Governance loan. Adeleke's campaign council demands suspects arrest in failed APC DG assassination. Oyebanji orders free medical care for freed kidnapped victims. The Guardian newspaper over the weekend reports NSC recovers 90.6 billion naira illegal port charges for importers, economy in 29 months. Faulty system persists after 37 billion naira National Assembly renovation. Atiku queries IMF report, demands accountability over alleged unbudgeted public spending. South Africa rejects Nigeria's compensation request over xenophobia losses. Better to be noble than filthy. APC youth defends Tinubu over Akara remark. Sunday Igboho, FID, IRT, rescue kidnapped victim in Kwara. FCT residents stage unity peace walk in support of President Tinubu. Xenophobia, Air Peace evacuates 801 Nigerians in 3 humanitarian missions. And finally, for the weekend vanguard, police arrest 89 motorists for plate number violation in Ogun State. Labour Party Vice Chair demands 50 billion naira public apology from Peter Obi. South African minister fires back at Shehu Sani, insists no compensation for Nigerians. Total lockdown in Anambra as Soludo orders for clearing of drainages records success. Those are the stories that made the headlines over the course of the weekend. Many of them are very relevant to the reports we have this morning, which is why it was important I opened with these stories. Fuad joins us now. Let's make use of the time that we have and cover as many stories as possible. Good morning, Fuad. How are you today? How's your weekend?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. I'm well, thank you. The rains are not very. They're not the best. They're not doing the best for a lot of things. I'm not even talking about my own specific situation with the rain. I think that's a situation that everybody understands. I'm talking about business owners, people who usually don't have stalls. The ones who just set up a little arrangement on the road. Those who put their wares on the floor, who pay for spaces on the floor. They cannot do that. It's only people who have shops that can still operate. There are people who are late for work and their cars are damaged. It's not a very good look. And the weather prediction tells us that we're yet to even see the worst of it, that the August-September situation is going to be extremely worse than what we're seeing at this time. And I think that I should actually start like this, since there's a story that is related to it, so we're not doubling back, right? The Minister of Works in the Vanguard newspaper, right, he has blamed the flooding of the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway on non-implementation of a Lagos State master plan with regards to flooding. Remember that a lot of people have pointed to the Coastal Highway as one of the, well, maybe not causes, but as one of the projects that perhaps was a catalyst to the heavy flooding that we were seeing in Lagos. And the president had given a directive to go and inspect and see what the situation is. Well, he says it's not necessarily the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway that is the issue. Lagos State has a master plan for flood management. However, the provisions of that master plan have not been followed, especially by the Lagos State residents, and that's why we're seeing an increase in flooding, and it really has nothing to do with that particular project. That's his position.
Well, Sage, now you have the minister who started a mega road project. And when I say mega road project, what is supposed to be a legacy project for this administration without an environmental impact assessment report. The minister is telling the whole of Lagos that there was supposed to be a Lagos State master plan for the management of flooding. But this same minister started that project, that same project, without an environmental impact assessment report. In fact, this project was started and there wasn't really any design. The initial plan of where the road was going to pass was eventually led for another alignment. So, you see, again, I agree that, look, when it comes to the Lagos State Master Plan, there have been a lot of violations. See, people have done their own thing, especially the elite. If you look at the problem that Lagos is dealing with on the island, particularly, we have some of these issues too on the mainland, but I think it's more pronounced on the island because you have our elites who have just gone all crazy and greedy, doing whatever they wanted, building on areas that they should never build, coming up with estates, reclaiming land, dredging. So it's just, look, it's to say the least, completely responsible what has happened to Lagos State, especially when it comes to real estate developments and what have you. And look, from the government to the traditional rulers to investors to ordinary Lagosians, we are all to blame for this. Sage, I told you that, look, I think it was under the Fashola administration then, I was still in the Prince then. And I remember that I was one of the journalists that witnessed the unveiling of the comprehensive Lagos State Master Plan. And so you had sections of the master plan being detailed for different central business districts. You have the 5 divisions of Lagos. And in that plan, apart from the intermodal transport plan that was well detailed out, there was also the flood plan, the drainage plans, the storm drainage systems, where the canals were going to be, why there was supposed to be setbacks, some land that were supposed to be left undeveloped as wetland collector. So look, it was well detailed out. But said, go to that entire existence and see what has happened there. A shame, a big shame, if you ask me. So on one part of the conversation, I agree with the minister that Lagos is seeing what it's seeing now because, again, there were clear violations of the Lagos State Master Plan when it comes to dealing with excess water, rising water levels, heavy rains that we've seen in recent times. But the same minister needs to understand that he also contributed to what is happening now. It has always been a problem. But he also contributed to the problem by starting that road without an environmental impact assessment report. Say, on the spot assessment of the road and the flooding situation in many of the communities adjoining the road simply shows that the road is on the higher ground now. Most of the communities have been dwarfed completely. They are now very, very low compared to the height of the road. And so what do you have? Most of the water will definitely go into these communities. And that's what you now have. So the question is, what was supposed to be the plan? These communities were already existing before the road came. In fact, the road was supposed to pass somewhere else. It was eventually realigned when they discovered some telecommunication cables. You remember all the story about having to redirect the road?
Yeah.
Because they later discovered that some telecommunication cables would be affected, blah, blah, blah. You know, a basic thing that an EIA report would have revealed. So that is what you have. It's unfortunate. I don't know what is going to happen because, you know, there are some errors you make. There are some mistakes you make that you can never correct. How are they going to solve the problem? Because these communities are now very low compared to how high the road is. And once you have a situation like that, the communities will always be flooded. So what was the initial plan? Look, I was asking a friend over the weekend, what have we done over the last 27 years in improving drainage channels, in planning our storm drainage systems? How many canals have we built? Have we dredged the lagoon? Have we dredged? You know, you see, it's supposed to be a continuous thing, understanding the topography and the nature of Lagos. And then in part of the story, you had the minister also talking about the fact that he went around Lagos and he saw a lot of refuse on the road, people just dumping refuse that had eventually clogged the drainage system. That statement should be directed to the Lagos state government. This idea of trying to gaslight ordinary Lagosians as being very indisciplined or we say dirty or they don't know what to do when it comes to waste management. Look, the commissioner himself has now accepted the fact that, look, there was a problem with the waste management system of Lagos. They closed most of the dump sites and they are now moving, our waste to parts of Ogun State. So there's even a delay in the...
You have 1 minute remaining.
I wonder why that's happening. Sorry about the interruption.
Lagos. Hello, Sid, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
And there's also a problem with respecting the town planning regulations of Lagos. So it's unfortunate where we find ourselves, and I think we need to ask ourselves some very pertinent questions. We've had the same political party ruling Lagos from 1999 till date. Oh, we built Lagos. Lagos is a mega city. But look at the situation of Lagos. Any little rain, everything gets messed up. We can't even manage our own waste. I agree that Lagos is a mega city. I've always said it. If you look at the population of Lagos and how cities are categorized, it is a mega city. But can we truly call Lagos a functional mega city? That is the question we should ask ourselves.
Well, that's the report. He also mentioned that some lagoons to aid drainage have not been built as well. That's part of the Lagos State Master Plan for Flood Management, that some of those lagoons have not been built, refuse are being dumped and what have you. Also, the rains is also causing some sort of delay in the transportation of refuse. They're trying to, I don't know if the word is on board, some of the waste sites that we have at the moment. All these things together is also a problem, is why this is happening. But let's move on to other stories as well. For another report that was really significant over the course of the weekend is the release of the kidnapped victims from Ekiti State, the ones that were taken from the church, the CAC church in Ileje. How do I say it now? Ileje. Yeah, local God, forgive me. Area of Ekiti State. They regained their freedom. However, one of the victims, a woman, she died whilst in captivity. They were released on Saturday. The report tells us, or Punch is reporting, that the kidnappers had demanded 1 billion naira in ransom, but they negotiated to 50 million, although the community say they only were able to raise and pay 10.5 million naira alongside other items that were demanded by the abductors, and that's how they were able to secure the release of those that were abducted. Again, I'm referencing what the Punch newspaper has said. The governor of the state has also asked that free treatment be given to those that have been brought back home. I saw the video, and everybody there is important, but there's a particular boy that really caught my attention. In fact, when his father went to pick him up, his father said, like in Yoruba, like, see, look at how emancipated
what is left of my child,
my child has remained. And I can understand why he would say that. That boy he was a shadow of himself. He was wearing only shorts, sand on it. He just did not, it was a terrible thing to look at. And videos like that, Fuata, just again reinforces our greatest fears about the treatment that are meted out on those who are still in the hands of these abductors.
I saw the video. Again, watched some of the interviews with some of the community leaders and heart-wrenching page. Unless you are from another planet, there's no way you watch the video and you don't feel sorry for this country. How did we even get to this level? What has happened to us? How did we fail ourselves to the point where this is what our people have to go through? Now, remember the Ekiti situation when the CAC church was attacked. And then, people were abducted. And then this release happened after about over 60 days, close to 70 days of them being abducted. So that's like over 2 months before they are released. A lot of times when these reports come, there's always this, do I call it argument or conversation about whether it was rescue or release? But in this situation now, you have the community member saying they have to contribute money. So this was a case of community members eventually raising money. They said they first raised 10 million naira. They sent the money. These guys did not release the captives. Eventually, I think they were able to make up the money to maybe close to 20 or 30 million. I really wasn't paying attention to the money because
they paid 10 million. No, it was 1 billion. They negotiated for 50 million, and then they ended up paying 10.5.
Yes, but eventually these monies were paid before this release happened. So this was a case of them having to eventually pay money to secure the release of these captives. And look at the condition, look at how these persons returned, look at their situation. They barely could walk. You could see that many of them were being lifted by their family members. Yeah. The women, maybe their husbands or whoever were lifting them. The children were in a very terrible situation. The question we should ask ourselves, for people say, oh, they've been released, would they ever get out of the trauma stage? And if we celebrate the release of these ones, I think one person was killed, eventually died. Yeah. So what then happens to people who die? How do you pacify their family members? How do you compensate their family members? I'm not talking in terms of monetary terms now. How are they going to get out of the trauma? For those who are back now, that child who has gone through hell, practically speaking now, how do you get the child out of the trauma? How do you revive the mind of that boy, that child, and so many other children who are in the hands of these captives? So it is what it is. It's unfortunate, and that's why some of us, looking at that video, kept thinking of what could be happening to the Oyo people. And why we talk about Oyo, there are still people in Kogi State. There are people in Katsina State.
Borno as well.
There are people in Borno State. I think Borno State is not even a twin situation. There are about two situations now.
Yeah.
On the day the Oyo happened, just about 24 hours, Borno happened. Another one has happened after that one in Borno State.
Yeah.
It's sad. It's sad and very unfortunate. I really don't know what to say again.
Very unfortunate indeed. We're happy that they're back, and I really hope that there's some consolation for the family that lost the woman that died. We don't know if they killed her or the conditions of how they were being held is what led to her being led to her death. However, it really doesn't matter, right? She shouldn't have been there in the first place. She went to church. People are allowed to go to their place of worship. They should be able to go to their place of worship without worrying if there will be a black bag over their head in the next by the next hour. Moving forward, we're still looking at the Punch newspaper. Let's talk about what's going on in South Africa. Killings. Federal government warns South Africa, threatens tough action. The federal government has warned that Nigeria may consider additional measures if attacks on its citizens in South Africa persist. This is as the country condemned the killing of 2 Nigerian nationals in South Africa and demanded immediate investigation, warning that the continued targeting of foreigners, particularly Nigerians, raises serious concerns about their safety and the resurgence of xenophobic violence in the country. The victim, Emeka Charles Iruegbu and Musa Yununa Joe, popularly known as Big Joe, were both killed on June 28, 2026. As a matter of fact, the federal government is demanding compensation for some of the businesses that Nigerians had to abandon. They had to close shop, they had to leave some of their investment and leave. Airpeace has brought about 800 Nigerians back. They had to go 3 times. And one of the South African senators says, we don't owe you anything. I mean, the fact that you're even able to leave the country unscathed should be enough compensation. Why should we pay you for the businesses that you lost by being here, especially for those who were here illegally? That's South Africa's position at this time. But I ask for outside, what exactly are the actions that can be taken by the Nigerian government as they're asking for compensation, or they're saying measures will be taken if South Africa doesn't do something about this?
Well, before we even talk about the call for compensation, because some of these Nigerians did not just set up businesses, they also bought properties, they own properties. And they are being forced to leave those properties, they are being forced to leave those businesses. And so one would expect that the government of South Africa will look into how to at least, work with the Nigerian government or other African governments to look at how these guys can be compensated. Because again, you are basically leaving your livelihood behind. You are leaving, your assets, whatever you worked for years, because some crazy people who don't understand that, look, this is not a situation of other Africans being their problem. Just not focusing on the right things. But it's just what it is. I don't think the South African government wants to accept any responsibilities for what has happened. They are also very culpable anyways. If you listen to how the officials have been talking about this situation, they talk with the 2 sides of their mouth. You see interviews of Ramaphosa and you know that, look, there's no way he's not well aware or in support of what is happening. He might be denying it or trying to deflect, but the reality is that, look, those things could not have happened without the support of the state. That's why you say, oh, my people have a right to protest. Oh, the only thing we're saying is that, the rights of people should be respected. These are not protests. People are being killed. If you look at this report now, it's saying that, look, 2 Nigerians, about 3, even 3, have been reported killed since this June 30 deadline, passed. So, I don't know how this whole compensation thing will happen. I like that the Foreign Affairs Ministry is now talking tough. We now appear to have a Minister of Foreign Affairs that knows her job, that can be a bit more engaged in diplomatically and can be a bit tough in the way she puts out her statements. The question we should now ask ourselves, what can we do to balance this aggression? Can we do anything that can get the South African government to understand that they need to step up and begin to protect Nigerians and other Africans, and Nigerians particularly because it concerns us? Because they've not done anything. They've just been sitting, laying by, looking at their own people, killing other people. So what can they? I've seen people suggest that we should go after their businesses. And I saw an interview where I think the CEO of, the CEO or the MD of MTN Nigeria came out to say that, you know what, thinking that MTN Nigeria is solely a South African business is a wrong thing to begin to say. because many of these investments are owned by Nigerians. In fact, it's an international business that is not just about South Africa alone. There are many Nigerians who are shareholders. That's why it's called MTN Nigeria. It's even quoted on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, if you understand. So we have to be careful so that we don't try to retaliate and then hurt ourselves in the process, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yes.
So I think we have to engage diplomatically and be, maybe someone, the ambassador. We need to send emissaries there. If we need to, something has to happen. We can't just keep quiet. And whatever must happen at the highest level of government, that engagement. Hey.
Well, there you have it. That's what I'm saying. I don't know. I don't think there's anything that we can really do in terms of sanctions per se. And again, we cannot.
If we go after their businesses, there are Nigerians working there. There are Nigerians. A lot of these, yes, the parent companies might be from South Africa, but some of the investments are already domesticated, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so one has to be a bit careful so that you don't just go for do an eye for an eye and then everybody goes blind.
It still trends in the papers, Mainland 98.3 FM. My name is Sage Babalola, our analyst for our site. We're looking at the news reports, especially those on the front covers of our newspapers, and we're currently reviewing the Punch newspaper. Let's look at the Punch and get an update on the fake agency brouhaha that we've been mouthing the last couple of days. Senate meets Tuesday, that's tomorrow, as fake agency budget row deepen. Now, the Senate is expected to address the controversy surrounding the 1.3 billion naira allocation to the controversial Presidential Foreign Intervention Promotions Council in the 2026 Appropriation Act as plenary resumes on Tuesday. Punch gathered that a forged appointment letter bearing a falsified signature of the Chief of Staff to the President, Femi Gbajabiamila, was accepted at the Civil Service Headquarters without adequate verification, securing Prince Adeniyi Adeyemi Matthew an office at the Federal Secretariat Complex in Abuja and giving the controversial agency the appearance of government legitimacy for over a year. So the conversation here is that how exactly did they find themselves as a line item on the budget if they were a fake agency, as has been admitted by the presidency? The report tells us that false appointment letter was accepted by the Civil Service Headquarters and there was no verification whatsoever of the agency or the personality that even submitted that letter. So the conversation remains that what are supposed to be the bureaucratic safeguards that failed, right, at multiple points in the budget office, at the House of Reps, at the Civil Service Headquarters, the diplomatic missions that he met with, also the government ministries, the National Assembly, the private individuals as well. And the report tells us here, although it says the source is an individual that pleaded anonymity, that particular line item was put in there without Adeniyi or any representative from that agency actually coming to talk about that provision. Typically there's the scrutiny as an MDA, you have to come and explain your budget. But the Adeniyi was not there. He didn't send a representative whatsoever. It just was on the line item. And that's what this Punch report is telling us.
Sage, I was listening to a caller last week who said, I come on here every morning setting alarm or setting the country on alarm and what have you. I'm like, if your brains are working and the reports about this so-called fake agency does not set an alarm in your head, then there must be something wrong with you. If your brains are actually working properly, say, as a Nigerian, and the things we have discussed so far about this fake agency, quote and unquote, and I say fake, quote and unquote, because the only reason why we are saying it's a fake agency is because the government has told us it's fake, right?
Yeah.
This has not been sorted out at the court. There has not been any independent investigation to really unravel what could have happened. But at least what we know so far, for any right-thinking, patriotic Nigerian, it should set you thinking. Did you see the Arise interview where Charles almost lost it on somebody?
Yeah, I did see that interview.
You do not blame Charles for are you serious? Are you okay? Is your brain working?
The comparison was a little ridiculous if we're being, what is 9/11 to, he said he just said that to prove that sometimes crimes can be international and can be sophisticated.
And then the man thought the only way to defend this nonsense, this embarrassing situation, this shameful situation, is to begin to say, oh, well, even in the US, if this is not 9/11, how do you compare this one to 9/11? That's just to show you that no matter how educated people are, they can decide to become useless on their own. You know, you can be useless by choice. How would they all, I don't know whether it's a medical doctor or a PhD holder, but for you to now say, oh, well, you know, what has happened is not anything new. You know, you remember that even in America, 9/11 happened. Now you saw that the journalist shut him up immediately to say, are you for real? This is entirely ridiculous. Say, you know, when we discuss these things, we discuss it because we understand that, look, it's not even about whatever we think about ourselves locally. What image are we creating of ourselves at the international level? If you listen to Political Roundtable yesterday, you know, almost at the end of the show, we realize that, look, why do you go to our embassy? You apply for visa, you have genuine reasons, valid reasons to want to travel, and then you are refused. Say, because nobody believes anything about the country. This man says did not even stop at the local level, though. He has met with these foreign emissaries. He has met with ambassadors. Now, the ambassadors in different countries and are reading this story. They are listening to all of these things. That, oh, you know, we've always known them. We know them. We know what they are capable of doing. But this is on another level. I remember having this conversation even before Political Roundtable with Barrister Curtis. And said, you know what he said? He said, look, you know Banana Republic, the country called Banana Republic. You know there's a country called Banana Republic.
Tell me
a country where there's no law, no rules.
It's a gang state, practically.
It's a gang state where people do things anyhow, where people they can dagbo anything. Just call it the most lawless country in the world. I am sure people in that country will be shocked about this one. As lawless as the people of Banana Republic are, no rules, no nothing, a country of fraudsters, a country of gangsters. Despite how bad things are for them in Banana Republic, I am 100% sure that this one will shock them. See, in fact, they might begin to think of how to come and learn from us. That an individual will beat all the guardrails, all the structures of government, just one person, one man. And to think that the presidency wants us to just suck it in, accept it, it's fake, it's fake and it's fake. We should just move on, that it is fake. A man would not only find what they call a fake agency mentioned in our budget, what money is appropriated for, met with the EFCC chairman, met with ambassadors. Look, said, got an office at the Federal Secretariat.
Fuad, I'm sorry to interrupt here. The Vanguard newspaper, in a related story, says that there's fresh documentation showing that the PERMSEC, Political and Economic Affairs Office, Engineer Nadungu Gagare of the Office of the, approved for this same individual to attend the Canada-Africa FinTech Summit that happened in August of 2025.
They will say it's a fake letter to say. That will be the end game. There's everything is fake now. All his letters are fake.
A cross-country summit in 2025.
And all of this should not set an alarm in anybody whose brain is working immediately to say, oh, are we sure we're actually running a government? Are we sure the government is running? You know, we've had several allegations about even the way our budget is structured. See, you remember when the senator said we are running two budgets?
Right.
Just over the weekend, the IMF also warned us.
Yeah, I was going to take that story after. It's in the Guardian newspaper.
So what we are saying is that look, and look, you know, the conclusion on the roundtable yesterday about this matter is that look, there's something you call global best practice. Say, at least in the minimum, by now you expect the president. This is about the presidency. This is about governance in Nigeria and about the image of the country. At least one would expect that, at least in the minimum, the president would have told his chief of staff to step aside. We are not even saying he should be sacked. If the chief of staff does not think there's any reason for him to resign, But for this to be properly investigated and unraveled, can you please step aside while we have an independent panel to investigate this matter? But it appears that it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And the assumption is that, maybe eventually we'll all keep quiet. Something is going to happen again. They can talk, they can shout. Another thing will happen, they'll be distracted, and we'll move on. That's the way we'll be moving on from a lot of absurdity. And that's why we are where we are. It's unfortunate, it's very, very unfortunate.
Well, the APC senatorial aspirant for Kwara South, Shola Ajimati, says that we should stop doing media trial, that it's being investigated. We should allow the courts to do their job.
You see the problem now. Wow. You see the problem. He thinks it's a media trial. He thinks this is about... Look, you have seen the problem now, that this is media trial. What trial are we talking about here? That one man beat all the structures of government? Do you know what it means to have been able to do all the things they said the man did? It simply tells us there's no government. It's simply, what is the conclusion is that there's actually no government. If one man can do all of this, open a CBN account,
34.
Employ staff.
It's not a CBN for 34 different accounts. Actually, he had 34 different accounts with the agency's name that he had opened. So
he had staffers. He was meeting with people. He had met with almost all the top officials of government.
He got accountants.
The only picture we have, he got an accountant from the Federal Ministry of Finance.
Yeah. Well,
the accountant.
I'd like us to move forward. As it's been said, maybe we should indeed wait for the courts to tell us.
Which court? We don't have to wait for any court. What court are we waiting for? This is beyond even the court. This is look, a lot of these people who are even defending this nonsense have not even made an attempt to step out of the shores of this country. To see the embarrassment we face when we try to travel out. You hold the green passport, you are embarrassed completely because nobody values it. Nobody respects it. It is because of things like this. Nigerians we are honest people. We are not criminals. They go out there, they treat us like criminals. Because of criminal activities like these that are perpetrated within our government. And somebody says we should wait for the court. What court are we waiting for?
Well, I'd like us to move to the Guardian newspaper. The top story here, 8.8 trillion off budget. Atiku Huriwa seek probe as Obi demands Tinubu's resignation. The Human Rights Writers Association of Nigeria, Huriwa, has called for an independent investigation into allegations that public expenditure estimated at 8.8 trillion naira was incurred outside Nigeria's approved budgetary framework. I'll do the best I can to summarize because the report is rather extensive. And we've also gotten something of a response, right, by the finance minister. So just for context, the IMF has put out a report, and in that report, it had highlighted that about 8.8 trillion naira was spent outside the budgetary framework of the country. Now, from the finance ministry, the explanation is that there are multi-year capital projects that actually span into several budgets, and there are provisions for capital rollovers where applicable. He says that the report should have also identified specific projects that is purported executed without appropriation. He also says that some MDAs and even the FCT have capital expenditure approved in separate budgets by the National Assembly. It's different, but that all of this still happens within the budgetary process. He speaks about special interventions to situations like insecurity, infrastructure, disaster management response, etc., etc. That sometimes even debt service obligations and statutory transfers can happen, right? And these payments are still subject to scrutiny, oversight, audit, accountability mechanisms, and should not be interpreted as an off-budget spending. That's a summary of the explanation that has been provided.
The simple question we should have asked Mr. Oyedele is to say, you know what? Should any expenditure of government not be captured by the budget? Let's say that should we have a situation where no matter what you got different names, accountants have a way of coming up with different names, intervention, special income, reimbursement. Accountants can grow you crazy if you sit down with them. They have names. Sorry to all the accountants listening to us, but we know what we know. Give names. I have to open.
If was I
Listen to me.
okay, there was a brief interruption in your speech. Yeah.
So the question, but let's make it simple so that we don't confuse ourselves.
Yeah.
Should there be any expenditure of government that should not be captured by the budget stage? If Oyedele says no, okay. So the question again to ask him is that can he swear on oath and make a declaration on oath? Let's put him on oath to say, look, in my honor and in my capacity as Minister of Finance, I can confirm that there was never any expenditure of government that was not ever captured by the budget. Because what the IMF is telling us, they are always quick to quote the IMF when the report suits them. When the report, the reforms are working, even though they are still some micro, the GDP is near, but the IMF in its report is telling us that look, about 2% of the GDP, which has now been put at an average of about 8 trillion, were expenditure done by government that was never captured, spending outside budgetary provisions. I know we've been asking questions, even though one of the excuses that, we've been running budget into budget, but whether we like it or not, no matter what Oyedele says, I am 100% sure that, look, he himself knows there are questions around transparency, accountability, and probity under this government. We can decide to live in denial about it. We can deflect. We can come up with excuses under different line items and what have you. But the reality is that, look, the way this government has been running its budget, the way it's been running its expenditure, the way they've been running the finance of this country, there are critical questions we need to ask them about transparency, probity, and accountability. See, we have huge budgetary provisions for capital expenditure, but monies are never disbursed. See, monies are never disbursed. Were we not here when the former Minister of Finance told us that, no, revenue targets have not been met? In fact, there's huge shortfall. He was also the one that revealed to us that, look, a lot of the capital expenditure components of the budget have not been funded. We were here when it was revealed that it was not about 11 trillion or so was budgeted for road construction and road rehabilitation and what have you. Just about 2 trillion was released in about 3 years. So, look, unless you want to be delusional, unless you just want to begin to play around, this government needs to answer some very critical questions. And it's good that it is coming from one of their allies, the IMF.
Yeah.
It's good that it's not coming from within. For Mr. Peter Obi that is talking about resignation, the man too like Wahala. He go laugh. I don't know why he has gone. Yeah, he has started resignation again. Nobody's going to resign. And I'm sure they're going to call for it. Article says it should be proved that nobody's going to prove anything.
Well,
that's why we keep saying that, look, whatever we do, even on radio as journalists, we're not trying to impose our opinion on anybody. But please think about it. Open up your brains and think about these things.
All right, we cannot take any more stories. However, Riley Moore is saying the United States intends to closely monitor the 2027 polls. Okay. A deputy spokesperson of the House of Rep, Philip Agbesa, is also saying that the reforms to NYSC, that perhaps it should be reconsidered. For example, the idea of a civilian DG and what have you, that the military oftentimes gives structure and discipline to these young core members. And so that kind of arrangement or that change might overall influence or affect that the entire point of NYC and what have you. They should rethink the reforms. And okay, and then finally we have Goodluck Jonathan debunks claims of being offered 500 billion naira to contest against Peter Obi and split the vote in the South.
Is he running or not? Did you forget about that one? Has he accepted the ticket given to him in absentia?
He didn't say
does he want to run or not? That's the better bribe, but does he want to run? Is he interested?
He didn't say
that's
anything.
The question.
He just says he wasn't offered any money to split the vote or nothing.
Is he a candidate?
He didn't say anything about that either. We have to give words out. Thank you so much for your time. We'll take a break. We're back at 8:40 for Mainland Focus. Don't go anywhere. The conversation continues.
You're listening to Mainland